All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the LSP Method Podcast, where we talk all things Lego Serious Play. My name is Michael Fern. I'm your host, and I have another special guest. So excited. So we have Sarah Derriks DeWitt. I hope I got that right. We are just talking off air. I've got terrible with accents. But
Perfect.
hi, Sarah. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Michael. Nice
Yeah.
to be here. Yeah, really
Yeah.
cool.
I'm
Thanks for the
excited.
invite.
Well, no, excited to talk. There's lots of stuff to talk about. Everything from a book to your work on Lego Serious Play and a whole bunch around Agile and all sorts of things. But as I do with most of the guests, I thought I'd let you introduce yourself rather than me trying to do some sort of, potted history. I just find, yeah, it's easier when you talk about yourself and tell us about all the wonderful things you've been doing. And I think I did a model. I got you to do a model as well. So feel
Yeah,
free to
you
weave
did.
that in wherever you want. But I'll hand over to you. Welcome, Sarah, and tell us about
Yeah.
yourself.
Well, my name is Sarah Derriks de Wit, as we say it in official Dutch. Um, and I live in Vlijmen. That's a little part of a little city next to Den Bosch in the Netherlands, so it's the south part. And I work at ProAwareness. That's a consultancy company for 2.5 years right now. And before that, I worked at different kind of companies, a lot of banking as well, for about 15 years in the agile environment. So I know a lot about agile.
Yeah, yeah.
About 2 years ago, let me put in the model. I think that maybe is
Oh, yeah, you got
a
a
better
model straight
thing.
up. Good. Hang on,
Yeah, there we go.
let me just get
Let's
you
see if the
on the big
lighting is
screen.
right.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, work-wise, as I mentioned, about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I discovered agile working, and about 2 years ago, I discovered Lego Series Play with one of our clients, where I was able to facilitate a workshop. Well, in relation to my model, just do a little bit about my personal life first, because that's always nice to share as well. Um, I'm a little bit wobbly, but I built a little bit of a tower. Well, it's not really a tower. It's more like a structure anyway, but that's completely fine. My husband, I have three little kids. The little ones is 3. Then I have my biggest one. He's 9. He's really like a smart hat, so that's why I also put in the little hat. The little one is the funny one, and we have a little girl. She's like really into beauty and stuff like that. And this is me with my book. I wrote a book. It's the Lego Series Play Method for Agile Professional, but that might be back. So this is my little book, and I really like to teach and help and guide companies through their agile transformations to be able to be flexible and to be able to adapt to change, because I think the world is changing so rapidly that we need some frameworks and methods to help us. And I think Lego Series Play also really helps with that. Then this little jiggly part actually is something I really like to do in my spare time. We really are theme park enthusiastic. So we really like to go to theme parks. There's a theme park about 10 minutes from here. That's our favorite one, but we also like travel the world and go to different ones. And I really like the nature. So forest, walking outside and just enjoying the weather, even when it's the Dutch rain, actually. Um, yeah, so for me, at the moment, about 2 years ago, I discovered Lego Series Play, and I've been
Mhm.
fond of it ever since, actually. Yeah, really. Yeah, I think it's my passion at the moment.
Cool. So
Yeah.
you were saying that you was it through a client that you got introduced to Lego Serious Play? Was it like they were doing it, or were you part of a workshop, or
No,
how did that happen?
it was one of my colleagues, Andre, who did it like before COVID,
Yeah.
actually, like a workshop or like a training. So become a certified facilitator in it.
Mhm.
And because it was a really big session, there were like 80 people over there. So he asked like, hey, I need some extra people just to join me and to help facilitate and to guide
Yeah.
the process. So I raised my hand and said, I will do it. And that was in December 2022, I guess.
Yeah.
And fall in love with it and did my facilitation course in January. And after that, like did proposition, made trainings,
Yeah.
and then I also saw the gap that there was no book or anything about the agile world, which all about transparency, inspection, and adaptation.
Yeah.
And also Lego Series Play, where also things are in relation to creating visible things and talking about it. So I thought that is the perfect match, and that's why about a year ago I decided to write a book about it, and yeah,
Yeah.
it came out in July. So yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, yeah, we can talk about the book in a second. Just, I wanted to, you mentioned agile and you mentioned change as
Mhm.
well in there and
Yeah.
transformation. And it's funny, like in this day and age, I often say to people that that's really the only constant. that things will
Mhm.
change. Like,
True.
and
Yeah.
I often say with Lego Serious Play that it's like the perfect change tool. Like, it allows people to, say where they're at, say where they want to go. It's funny. I actually saw a post
Yeah.
on LinkedIn the other day, which was actually in relation to coaching, and it was the same thing. It was like, where are we now? Where are we going to go? And the middle bit
Yeah.
is how you get there. And I'm guessing that's agile, that's change, that's helping transform and adapt and all the
Yeah.
tools.
Yeah.
So I definitely
Actually,
see it
that's completely
fitting
true. Yeah.
perfectly. Yeah. I see it fitting perfectly into that toolkit. So, let's talk about the book. So you wrote a book. Tell us a bit about it, like what's in it and things
Well,
like
the
that.
book is really about how you can, a little bit about the Lego Series Play method, how it
Yeah.
originated, what you want to achieve with it, how it really works, like the physics behind it actually. So also how
Yeah.
your brain works and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
because you do create systems. So system thinking and systematic coaching also comes along, I think, with it. And then it was really about all the different frameworks that there are within the agile way of working or the agile
Mm.
world. Then you can think about Scrum and Kanban and Lean and
Mm.
design thinking, all that kind of stuff. But also, as you mentioned, also individual and team coaching, because that's
Mm.
also really an essential part of working together and collaborate in a continuous way in that sense. So the
Mm.
book is really 99 different ways of how you can use Lego Series Play and the method in an agile work environment.
Yeah.
And also, if you're not in an agile work environment and you have like the team coaching or do individual coaching, the book can also really help you. But it's
Mm.
like a step-by-step guide with the guidelines, with different procedures that you can do, and all sorts of kind of tips and all that kind of stuff as well. So
Yeah.
it's
Cool.
just a pick and choose kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. And I often say to people that, you can just do straight Lego Serious Play, like it was sort of originally developed.
Mhm.
And, a lot of my client work is just, hey, Michael, come do some Lego Serious Play on collaboration, or there's a new team, and it's very straight Lego Serious Play. Um, and I like the angle that you've taken with the book around the combination of it with other tools. And I think that's where I see for most people that they want to be leading towards with Lego Serious Play. So yes, there are some of us that'll just be more Lego Serious Play specific, but I think a lot of people get a lot of benefit from just combining it with other tools.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
whatever tools you have, it's like you can write a post-it note, you can just talk about it. But hey, if you can slide Lego Serious Play in and use that as a different way to drive engagement, get different answers, then I find it always makes those other tools better and the other content better for your workshop. So I love that you've got
Yeah.
99 of them packed into a book. What's an interesting one? Just question off the top of your
Um,
head.
yeah, I
What's an
think
interesting one that you like to combine with Lego Series Play?
and yeah, I think a really interesting one is one, and that's a little bit of a bigger one, I guess. And
Mm,
that's also one of the things, that's also a really nice anecdote to
mm,
share. I was with an educational company. It's a university in the Netherlands,
mm,
and they had a team of developers, and they really wanted to see, okay, who are we? Who are and how does everything work? How, yeah, what are we as a team? So
mm,
we started with working, and they needed to build themselves. Who are you as a person, and what drives you? What tell us something about you? So the little model that tells something about yourself. Then we put
mm,
that together in a team.
mm,
So okay, what does our team look like? And really build on that specific team
mm.
with, okay, how do we collaborate? What are the connections in that sense? Then we built their whole context. So what are all the things around it? Kind of work do you do? And then we built the stakeholders. So we
Yeah,
did a little bit of stakeholder mapping. So
yeah.
they built all their stakeholders around it, made connections, and it was like a really big table. It's a really big build.
Mm,
And then they invited their stakeholders to be present in that specific moment, to
cool.
share with them what they built and who they were in the build. And there was one person, it was a chief product owner, and he was there and he looked at himself or the building of himself. And
Mm.
it was like a brick wall with him standing next to it with like a little ladder and a little rope going through it to the team. And
Yeah,
like, yeah, but this is not who I want to be. Do you really
yeah.
see me like this? And it was for him like a really eye opener. And they had
Mm,
given him feedback over and over and over again, and it didn't stick. And then he saw the building, and he said, "Okay, but if this is who what you see me like, I don't want to be like that."
yeah,
And they
interesting.
changed it together with the whole team and their stakeholders to the new environment.
Mm,
And I saw that person about 3 weeks ago, and I asked him, how is it going now? And
Yeah.
he said, or she said, like the person in the team, she said, yeah, every time when his demeanor changed or something changes, we say, hey, think about the Lego. And he
Yeah.
said, okay, okay, great. Yeah, you're right. Let's. So I
Yeah.
think that is a really nice one about building and stakeholder mapping in that sense.
Mm.
Another really fun thing to do, we call it the carousel. So
Mm.
it's a merry-go-round actually. So that's, for example, for product innovation.
Mm.
Let everybody think by themselves about a thing to improve or something innovative about a specific product you are making.
Mm.
Then, if you're, for example, with a group of six, let three people rotate
Mm.
and let three people stay with their builds and then rotate around. So you every time you get like the 50% solution. So
Yeah.
make it 50% better and change the build and do that. So everybody had their turn. And then you have like six ultimate solutions
Yeah.
to an innovative product, for
Problem.
example. That's also a really fun one to do in relation to product development and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I like that. Yeah, a couple of things with that. That last one's interesting. Like, I find when you get down the Lego Serious Play method, like when you learn it, you know how to do it, you feel comfortable in it. Often it's the next things to think about are things like the people movement and the idea movement, and like what you just
Mhm.
described there is just shifting half the people and getting different perspectives on it. And
Yeah.
I find we could probably do a lot more of that in Lego Serious Play, where it's like moving people around, shifting perspectives around. Once you've got the models, it's doing other stuff with them. And so I really like that one. The one you were sort of talking about before as well, where it was sort of a bit of a team identity leading into a sort of stakeholder mapping one.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's fascinating you went to that next level where it's almost like giving feedback. You do the stakeholder mapping, and normally it's just for the team for their understanding and awareness of the
Mhm.
stakeholders. But I like that next step of, hey, look, inviting them in and actually giving the stakeholders the feedback of what it was or how they're viewed.
Yeah.
Some of the best sessions I've had is when you've actually invited those stakeholders in from the start and actually got them to build as well at the same time, not just right at the end.
Mhm.
But no, I really like that. That's an interesting one. I often say with that format is, you start with that individual. It's almost like concentric circles. It's like,
Mhm.
like you described, it's like that individual, who am I sort of thing. Who are we is that next sort of circle out. And then you look at the stakeholder mapping, the ecosystem, and then it's almost like you've
Yeah.
got another concentric circle when you invite those people in as well. So yeah, it's great to hear all these different formats. And I always love when agile people, UX, service design, I love everyone from that field that comes in to learn Lego Serious Play because you always have so many tools already. Like, you've just described some of
Mhm.
them and, you've probably done those 99 that you've got in your book. You probably already do most of them
Yeah.
without Lego Serious Play, like prior to, what was it,
Yeah.
2022
That's
and 2023. It's like,
That's really true. That's why it was really easy to create those 99 because we were me with my co-author Frank, we were really like, okay, what do we do and how can we like Legofy it
yeah, yeah,
actually?
just bring
That's
in Lego
more the
Serious
thing with
Play.
like Lego Series Play on the basis and with all the respect for everything Lego Series Play because I think it's a really, really powerful method and
Mm,
a way of working. But
mm,
then how can we change it or like upgrade it so we upgrade our work? Make it
mm,
more fun, make it more interactive, more engaging. But also what you said about the feedback part, I think that is the most beautiful thing I have seen.
mm.
What has been happening within Lego Serious Play, that people give feedback, but just talk about the build. And I
Yeah.
think that's also the thing that people find most scary. And you ask me like to build something also in relation to what people don't say or what's not
Mm.
highlighted enough. And I
Yeah.
think that is also really, really the part. And I even built something for
Yeah, yeah,
you
bring it in. Let me
in
just
that part
big big screen.
because
Go
I
for it.
think although like what people don't I don't talk about enough is be transparent. So this is the transparent one, but really look also through each other's windows and have like different perspective and change perspective in that sense. But also if you and that's why I put in like all different, I don't know if you can see it correctly, but all different kind of heads. It's sometimes you don't feel like yourself today, and sometimes you feel like a superhero, or sometimes you feel like the boss or the queen or whatever. Sometimes you feel happy, sometimes you have an off day. And I think all that those kind of stuff, Lego helps you explain stuff or give feedback, or because you can talk about the build, and not really about sometimes it's depersonifies itself. Maybe that's the thing. You can talk about the build and give feedback in a different kind of way. And that is also more easy and more safe. And I think in general, that is something we can do more often. I think
Mm.
everybody at schools or like with master classes learns how to really like give feedback.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's also really about receiving feedback. And I think Lego Series Play and the method really helps with not only giving feedback to people, but also receiving that feedback, and looking at stuff makes it way more tangible, way more visible, which
Mm.
also makes it easier to understand.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you've highlighted there is, if feedback is hard both to give and to receive. And, actually it brings up two things. You know, I think the world, our work, it all just would go a whole lot better if we all just got to the heart of the matter. We just, so it's like you talked about that
Yeah.
transparency block on your break. It's like if we can just be authentic, if we can just get to what everyone really thinks, then you don't have all this other stuff that goes along with it. But we find that hard. Like, just you and I talking, if we were particularly if we're in the same room and, when you're there, there's a whole bunch of different things that go into it. And I always say with Lego Series Play, like almost like the key thing about it is, well, one of the key things is that externalization of the idea. It's the separation of the idea and the person. And
Yeah.
that's hugely important for feedback. So it's like, to go back to the original example where they brought in the stakeholders. It wasn't, you as the builder, me coming in as the stakeholder, and us just, talking at each other, and you're saying, well, Michael, you're like a brick wall. Because then suddenly, like, there's value judgments, there's, maybe
Yeah.
our history, Sarah, and, all that sort of stuff. But by placing in the model, it's almost like it brings a third entity into the discussion. And I know you know this, but it's just interesting. This externalization of it, I think, unlocks a lot of things like feedback, a lot of conversations that are difficult to have,
Yeah.
because you're not talking at each other, you're talking through this model. And one of the things, I'm not sure if I mentioned on the podcast, but we talk about it as object mediated communication. So instead of just
Mhm.
person to person communication, we're actually talking through an object.
Yeah.
And what you described with feedback is just, it's just a beautiful example of that those conversations are just so hard to have normally. But if you can just it's like just putting a Lego model in between both of us to make that conversation go a whole lot easier. Amongst a zillion other things that that
Yeah.
it's the method's great for, but I just feel like that's one of the key things that helps unlock a lot of it.
Yeah.
And you've done some brilliant examples. So I like that. So that model you're just talking about, it's like what we're not talking enough about is around feedback and around authenticity. And I liked what you talk about different perspectives and, taking other people's different perspectives and, opening those little windows like you did. Um,
That's,
so,
by the way,
okay.
another funny example also from the book, but something I always incorporate in workshops. And I'm also really curious if you do that as well. But the changing perspective part is something that's for me like something I always put in.
Mm.
And what I do then is really encourage people to go through their knees, stand up on a chair, maybe sometimes
Mm.
even stand on the table, walk around, also
Yeah.
again creating the movement, but really looking at it from a different perspective as well, and then have the conversation, do we need to change something if we made a shared build, for example,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
let them change that in the meantime as well. Because it's also really funny that when I look at my workshops, most of the time, or people are standing and building, or they are really also again stuck to their seat. And if they walk through a table to get some Legos or stuff like that, then they
Mm.
move.
Yeah.
But the building always like happens in their own little safe space
Yeah. Yeah. It's
until
like
they
here.
like, yeah, this, and
Yeah.
then until they like bring it together. But then the changing perspective part is also really fun. And people always say, oh, are you going to stand on a chair? Am I going to stand up on a chair? Yes, you are. And
Stand
that
on
is
that
also
swivel chair. Be
yeah,
careful.
well, I will hold for you. You go up there. But that's always funny. Do you do the same thing as in your workshops when you do stuff?
Yeah, so I've had that same realization where I call it a lot of fine movement where it's like small movements where
Hmm.
so the way I present the Lego is like on a bag on the table. So it's like there's even less getting up and going off and getting. I know some people present the Lego as like a side table and you have to stand up and go and get it,
Yeah, I
but
do
mine's
that.
actually on the table. So there's even less like them getting up and moving. And so it always is in that very small space and they're doing that. So there's actually there's two ways I get people to move. And sort of perspective shift. And one of them you described is it's when there's group work. So whether it's a shared model or whether it's a landscape, it's always, yeah, once we've built it, get up, move around the other side. I generally don't get people to stand on on the chairs and the tables, but I do get them to
Why
like,
not?
well, I mean, they could. I do say like stand over it. So I don't normally encourage them to get on the chairs, but they can. I mean, it's totally fine. But bob down, look at it, go around. I often get them to do it in silence as well to start with, because, all of that stuff is just changing it up. They've been talking, building, building, so you get them to move. So definitely as a group, I do that as well. But one thing a little tip that I picked up with the individual model is it's actually a tip from art therapy. So, there's not many people know with Lego Serious Play that there's a lot of very similar like characteristics that sit under Lego Serious Play as does art therapy. So art therapy is, you've got like, pieces of paper and you draw, or you've got sand, or you've got clay, and it's a very similar thing. It's a form of expression. So it's used more in therapeutic stuff. But one of the things they get people to do is they get them to sort of manipulate or shift the perspective of their own thing. And so what I do with individual models is once they've built it, before they share, I often say, hey, just twist around your model. Or if can't twist it around, because some people build in a way that is not easily movable.
Yeah.
Just get up and have a look at it, from the other side of the table. And would you change anything? And, on their own individual model, as well as, when we do it for the shared model. So there's a couple of points where I get a bit of that movement in. Just interestingly, Sarah, it's kicked off in my mind. There's one of the or some other techniques that I've been trying where it's like getting people into pairs to do stuff. So normally
Mhm.
with individual models, it's you do your individual model, you share it within a table of 5 or 6, and that's usually the way we sort of manipulate the tables and the people. But I've been trying more and more to get people in pairs. So share in pairs, go find someone from another table and
Mhm.
share your model and stuff like that. So it is trying to get more of that movement. So yeah, I think it's a
The
great
the
topic to
thing
bring up.
I use for that actually, that's really funny that you mentioned it because I always also take a look, for example, at liberating structures. There are
Mm.
specific workflows and they have the one, two for all.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that is
totally.
also a really good one to incorporate. I have done that a couple of weeks ago when we did our book launch. We also did like a workshop where people who didn't know each other, but they were at the same place,
Mm.
our book launch. So we asked them to build themselves and the reason why they were there, and then share it with somebody from a different table and
Mm.
looked at similarities and create like a build that says together why
Mm.
they were there and what their similarities was. And it really sparked like really beautiful conversation about the
Mm.
reasoning why they were there as well.
Yeah.
But and that you can do, for example, also if you do it for first yourself, then together, bigger group, and then
Yeah.
even with everybody together. That maybe if you have like a really large group of 60 to 80 people or 100 people, that might be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
But a one, two for all in that sense really, really, really works well.
Yeah. No, I love liberating structures. And if anyone listening doesn't know about them, just look up liberating structures. So they're techniques to, well, I guess liberate the structures of meetings.
Yeah.
So the idea is they're meetings and workshop sort of mini techniques that you can bring into. And look, I think Lego Serious Play is a type of liberating structure. It's not part of that formally, but it definitely is
Yeah.
one. Interestingly, with the one, two, for all. So the idea with this, for those who don't know it, is, it's basically a way to break up the group. So it's like, are you doing individual work? Is there pair work? Is there group in fours? Or are you doing it all in one group? And I reflected maybe a few years back that with Lego Series Play, or at least the way I was doing it, there's a lot of one, obviously. You're building, you're just in your own mind. But
Mhm.
then the four bit is sort of like a 4, 5, 6. Like it's four represents small group. So it's then small group, which you share in small groups, you do group models, you do landscapes. And then I would often do all as, say you got 20 people, then you would
Mhm.
do a big session where, you're sort of extracting all, each table sort of shares their ideas. but I didn't find I was doing much of the two. So I was doing the one for all, but I wasn't doing much of the two. And part of it, I think, is time. But I think more and more I'm realizing that that's another sort of intimate space. So there's one, there's four, but
Mhm.
the pair can be another grouping that can
Yeah,
provide, like you said, just in that example, it can provide a really nice sort of combination. It's almost like it's a two-person shared model in some
yeah,
respects, where it's like you got two individual models, people come together and they maybe pick bits off that they want or put together that. So yeah, it's something I'm exploring because I think it's another style of Lego series play
yeah,
activity. Love it. Um,
yeah.
any other sort of tips or workshops? Like, so, you've it's been a few years since you've started doing Lego series play.
Hmm.
So, I mean, maybe I should phrase that as you were coming into Lego series play from that first time you saw it, when you were co-facilitating to when you learnt it to these first few years. Any sort of tips on that? I guess that journey at the start, like anything that stuck in your mind from these first few years for you that you,
Well,
I
I
know.
think
Go on. Sorry,
Yeah,
go
I think
on.
one of the most things is don't be afraid and just
Mm,
try it and do it. I
yeah.
think we are inclined to maybe be a bit hesitant, like and ask yourself the questions, can I do this? Am I good enough? All that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Try to push that aside. If you've done the training, you can, but
yeah.
it's all about like creating hours and doing it and being, I think, also enthusiastic about the things that you do. Like I always go out with more energy than I came in, actually,
Yeah.
after a workshop. So I think that's the thing. I think one of the other tips is sometimes let it happen.
Yeah, I like
Just
that.
let the process be the process and trust the process.
Mm,
So if you have explained the rules of play and if you explained the assignment, or I always call it the mission that I need to do, just let it simmer. And if somebody like really, I had a woman there once who hadn't touched a Lego brick for 40 years, and she was like frightened, like, oh, what am I gonna do?
yeah.
Then like sit next to her and have like a little bit of a one-on-one, but trust the process. It will happen. And
Yeah.
let people trust their hands. I think that is the we are, I think, as for example, me, I'm also a coach. We are inclined to be a savior and try to help people and stimulate and all that kind of stuff. But some people just also need like a little bit of moments to take ease and trust that it will be okay, and
Yeah.
also experiment. Like you said,
Mm,
Michael, like I'm experimenting to see how I can fit in the two. I didn't even think about it. I just did it and I thought, okay, liberating structures could be a good thing. And let's try
mm.
to see if it works. If it doesn't work, then they still had a really great workshop
Yeah, it's a great
because
attitude
they
that.
don't know if
Yeah.
it's the right way to go or not. They
Yeah.
will get stuff out of it eventually. Just try and do it. I think
Yeah, I
that's the
love it.
main thing. Yeah, and
Yeah, I
don't
love
be
it. I think both of those things, Sarah, they sort of come down to confidence. So you talked about just do it, like have that confidence in yourself to just go out and do it. And if I reflect back on my first few years, it like the best thing to do is, like you said, is just it's like getting the hours up. It's like you got to do it over and over again until you get more comfortable, get more confident, and it just becomes sort of second nature to you. So there's sort of that where it's like, many of us have imposter syndrome where it's like, you think why should
Mhm.
people listen to me? And I love the things you said about, well, they don't know. Like you're still better at them than in Lego series
Yeah.
play in terms of running the process. Like they don't know it. And it's funny because I reflect back on some of my early sessions and I'm like, they went okay and they went fine, but so much better now. And that's sort of what you should be, aiming
Yeah.
for is to always improve. But if you never give it a shot, you're never really improving. So I like that. So it's confidence in yourself, but then you talked also about confidence in the process. And I really like that because, we do it enough and I get to the point now where I know going in what Lego series play can do. So I don't, like I
Mhm.
let it breathe. I just know that people need that
Yeah.
time. You said you know, you go in with questions, you're sparking things, you're stirring the pot, you're, getting them to think differently, which is what our aim is. And sometimes that some people are just like, boom, that sparks something immediately. Sometimes it's by the end of the session. Sometimes it's even after the session when,
Yeah.
as an external facilitator, you might be long gone. Um, and I think having that confidence in the process that you described is super important. Just to know something different will come out. And trust. trust that because it's funny like a lot of people haven't learnt or they don't know Lego Serious Play. Like, you would get it. A lot of people come into
Mhm.
your
Yeah.
sessions and as participants and they're like, wow, what is this thing? And you have to step them through it. But people, not many people realize it's what 25 years of development of this method. Like that's a
Mhm.
long time for a
Yeah,
tool
it
to
is.
be developed. To see like
Yeah.
I try to think how many people, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that have gone through it. And so it's almost like you just got to trust that history or trust that it the method got to this point and it's good enough. It really does work.
Mhm.
And so, as long as you just follow along and then once you feel comfortable, experiment, like you said, and push it further and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, just be confident in it. And I think I mentioned this in the podcast, but it's like that, the creativity little sort of diagram where it's like a straight line and then it's just squiggle and mess and then out comes a
Yeah.
straight line. It's like being comfortable with that mess in the middle, which is, it's humans are messy, thinking's messy, creativity's messy, change
Yeah.
is messy. And so it's like you have to be, as a coach, a facilitator, you've just got to be comfortable with that and know you've got a great tool to bring it out. So yeah, all that you described is just so spot on from your own personal confidence to confidence in the method.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I'd say one thing that I also always do at the end, I put in a roti flip that says return on time invested. So I
Yeah.
always ask the people when before they leave if they could write down on a sticky note what they thought about the workshop. How do they
Mm.
leave? If it's like happy, it's like the five smiley faces.
Yeah.
And then also with feedback, because I always say like you did some improvement, you went like through hardship together now and you went through difficult times and you build solutions together. But
Mm.
I also want to continuously improve the things that I do. So if you have feedback, good or bad, or everything in between, write it down on a sticky note and let me learn as well from this experience. And
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to, well, it's not easy, but if you trust the process, people get through it and they will learn stuff. But I think
Mm.
also the reflection to yourself as a facilitator is also really, really important. So
Yeah.
let them allow them to give you feedback as well,
Mm.
um, and
Yeah.
improve on that from yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to be long term a good facilitator, it's like this, it's almost like a paradox. It's like you almost have to intensely care what people think, that feedback that you describe, but then also you need to take it all with a grain of salt. So it's like because it's like I remember taking a lot of that feedback in, and it's like you can almost be overwhelmed, not overwhelmed by it, but it's like this balance. It's like you have to see that and trust it, but then also sort of absorb it and not let it sway you too much. Maybe it's what I'm trying to think about is if there's enough signal, as in, if one person says this from some feedback, you're like, okay, you take notice and you sort of maybe you'll adjust things, maybe not. But then if that signal keeps happening, if that particular feedback, and so I think it's yeah, I've struggled with this sort of evaluation feedback thing for my own practice because I can see where things go right, things go wrong, and you always want to get people's opinions.
Mhm.
But then I think some people can be overwhelmed by that, and it can be almost like paralyzing as well. So it's almost like, yeah, this paradox where you've got to take that feedback in, but then also, it's almost like sift through it and integrate it
That's
in the right way. But that's why we love facilitation and coaching because it's
yeah.
it's that art. It's like yeah.
Yes, and sometimes with feedback, it's the same thing as you said. You don't always have to do something with feedback. You can
Mm,
read it and say, "Hey, I don't recognize myself," or "This is a really good idea. Let me try doing this instead,"
yeah.
for example. And if it's all hunky dory, hoorays, then of course it's really great for your ego as well. But I always look at the stuff that's like challenging me to see,
Yeah.
okay, am I gonna do something with it? Do I want to do something with it? And ask myself those questions because
Yeah.
if they had they put in the time to give me feedback, I do feel that I need to read it. And of course, sometimes it is with a grain of salt, or sometimes
Mm,
it's completely off topic.
yeah.
And
And sometimes
then
it's great.
leave it aside, read it, take it in, leave it aside, and think about the things that you can do or can change or want to change and try to change that.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what you're saying earlier is you take that feedback in and you just have to do more sessions to test that out. Like, and this is why where I think some people get that paralysis or maybe they don't have the confidence to do more and more sessions. Like even if it's free sessions for a local church or a local,
Yeah.
community group or men's group or women's, it's like I remember doing like co-working space stuff, like for co-working spaces for like
Mhm.
3, 4 people came, and I'm like, great, this is a great chance to test something out. Or I remember doing it with an education company where I'd go in every 3 months and I would run a 2 hour session for free for them. And I'm like, great, I'm going to try all this stuff and I'm going to, it's almost like, a
Yeah.
little petri dish of experiments. Oh, I love that. Hey, did I get you to do a third one about anything you wanted, any build?
Well, you did actually, and that was the most difficult one, I guess, because I
It's
was
pretty
really thinking
open-ended.
about, okay, what am I gonna do? And I think for me, I did the epitome of what Lego series play means for me in relation also to my agile way of working.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to this. And when you look at the agile way of working, it's really about transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So be able to be transparent about the things you do and you don't do. Be inspect the things that you do and adapt to change. It also comes back to, I think, our conversation about feedback and continuously improvement. And for me, this is actually what Lego Serious Play is. It's building bridges together and then be able to, if you have, or if you're swimming in something or in a problem, don't know how to fix this, it creates a ladder and everybody contributes. Everybody is different. So these are all different kind of blocks. It really unites diversity, I guess, by creating one common language and understanding which you can build further on. So for me, like the building the bridges is really the fundament about like of everything Lego Serious Play. And it really allows you to be your ultimate self in it and during it. And I think that really unites everybody together to be able to do great things. So for me, that is actually what Lego Serious Play is all about. And it also makes me really proud after a session that people say that and feel that and have created that one common language via, well, maybe 1,000 bricks.
Mm.
It's still mind-blowing to me, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love the language you use around common language. Like, that Lego series play is that common language. And you talked about diversity
Yeah.
and that sort of the color of the different bricks. And it's interesting diversity. Um, I think for me, like I always bring Lego series play back to, what are the contexts we use it in, which is around business and achieving things. Like that's sort of
Mhm.
what, Lego series play can be used in many different spaces. I've just did some podcasts around sports and prisons and, it's wonderful places, but, most of us sort of work in the business realm. And so, we're after achieving some action and some outcome. And so, I mean, I'm always, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, I think I just swallowed something. So I sort of lost my train of thought there where I was going with all that. In business, we're always sort of action oriented. Oh, that's right. I was around diversity. And so I always think diversity is, I think there's a, a benefit to how people feel and the Lego series play session, all different types, all different sort of ways of thinking, all different perspectives that come in. And I think the way people feel that they're heard, they're valued, I think that's amazing. But I think ultimately, because we come from that business perspective, and we want to achieve that outcome, is that it's just good for business. Like, as in, all of those perspectives, all of that diversity of thought and whatever other perspective it is around gender, race, where they
Yes.
live, all that sort of stuff, it just feeds into a better outcome. And I
Mhm.
think that's what I love about Lego Series Players. It gives people that feeling of I've heard, but it makes for something better. It's like the classic I always talk about, you know, 20% of people in the room are just jabbering away. They're
Mhm.
the extroverts, they're the powerful. And you've got the introvert, you've got the person kinesthetic learner who, is just sitting there wanting to move. And
Yeah.
like if you can engage all those people, it's just the return. You talk about return on investment. The outcome you get from it is just so much better.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think diversity is ultimately just a business like the way we do it. It's just a sort of driver of immense value in business.
True.
So yeah, anyway, that's where I went with it. Diversity,
Yeah.
common language, color.
Yeah,
I love the way you sort
that's
of
it.
brought that what Lego series play meant to you. That's awesome. As we get towards the end of the podcast, Sarah, any final things you wanted to mention, like any last tips, maybe even something, you're obviously from the Netherlands. If you want to talk about Lego series play in the Netherlands or in Europe, or is there any last thing that we haven't covered that you'd love to share?
I think maybe Lego Serious Play is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and I really hope that with us together as facilitators or people who are listening to the podcast but haven't experienced it, just go experience it. And with each other
Mm,
as facilitators, let's unify. I think that's also the thing. There are so many different organizations that are now like doing Lego serious play. And I
mm.
really hope that we are able to unify in that sense. Like we didn't know each other before, like on LinkedIn as well, Michael. And now we are
Yeah,
here
yeah.
sitting together with the podcast. So I think that the main thing I want to say is sometimes when I look online and stuff like that, people are a little bit harsh towards each other. But I think ultimately we all want to do the same thing, and that is help unite people with this method and drive business change and drive change overall. Um, so don't be too hard on each other, and let's just make the world better, I guess. That's maybe a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah, I love it.
holistic, but with Lego
No, I
serious
love it.
play and let's unite in that sense and don't fight.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I've had that, over the years I've been doing this, I've been trying to understand both the Lego Series Play community, but also just facilitation in general. Like the facilitator profession is very, I've said this before, it's very isolating. Like, we don't, there are, International Federation of Facilitators and coaches, and, we have our little professional pockets.
Yeah,
But, most of our work is just done in isolation where we're off doing a workshop and then, maybe we've got a co-facilitator or not. Maybe there's a couple of support groups we can chat to about this and that. And it's all very informal as well. And I think there's that. And there's also with Lego Serious Play, it's been an interesting journey for me to understand, the different trainers, the different philosophies.
hmm
And I echo what you say. I think it's just bringing it back down to almost like the values of Lego Series Play itself, which is just,
yeah,
hey, everyone's, there are lots of different ways to do things. Everyone's voice is valid. Let's get it all on the table and then take what we need from it, the best of it, and support
yeah,
each other and sort of lift each other up. I mean, part of this podcast is me doing that. It's to meet other LSP facilitators, but it's also to promote them to the world, so that other people, other facilitators, other coaches, other Lego Series Play people can sort of learn about you and others as well. So, yep, I echo what you said about that.
yeah.
I think I see a world in the future where Lego Series Play is very open in terms of both its level of adoption in the world, but also its variations in the world. So, for instance, for you, I know where you trained was like, they have a particular way of doing it, but it's like I see you branching out and you talked about experimenting and you talked about adapting and changing and things like that. And I think I think the method is more robust. We talked about how long it's been around, but I think it's more
hmm
robust than people think. Like I think there
Yeah,
are core few things if you do it right, and then there's so much more that you can experiment on top of it. And why wouldn't we? Like a lot of my stuff has been things I've learned from people who have experimented and come back and told me about it. And I'm like, that's great. I'm going to do
yeah,
that now. I'm going to teach people that. I'm going to, I think the knowledge sharing, there's so much that we could do. And that's why I love what you've done with your book and like how I do with my book. It's like the more we can provide, I mean, essentially free information. Yes, books cost a little bit
mm,
to
yeah,
print out
yeah,
or access and things like that, but it's in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty much free information. And if you can just share that, then it just makes us all better. So I
yeah,
applaud you for that. Speaking of the
yeah,
book,
yeah.
and you in general, where can we find the book, and find you and follow you and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff?
Well, at the moment, like I will show the book again, a little bit of free promotion in that sense.
Yeah,
It
go
is
for it. I love it.
only in Dutch at the moment. It will
Oh,
be
okay, do I have to learn Dutch? Damn.
no. No, we're doing our best with the publishers to get it out. Hopefully beginning of 2025 in English
Awesome.
and
Awesome.
possibly also in German. That's not completely
Great.
sure, but first English. So hopefully beginning 2025 it will be in English. At the moment, for the Dutch people listening, it is available on like the general website. So it's every bookstore you can order it in.
Yep.
It's on I think Amazon, bol.com, like the main things where
Main
you
ones, yeah.
can just order stuff online. You can also order it online.
Yeah.
And where you can find me on LinkedIn. I work for ProAwareness, so if you look up ProAwareness and Lego Series Play, you will also find me as well,
Yeah.
under the name Sarah Derriks de Wit, with double R. Yeah, or LinkedIn, of course, or if you have any questions in relation to Lego Series Play and the Agile way of working, know where to find me.
Yeah,
And
cool.
I also will be, my next big event where I will be speaker is at Scrum Day Europe. That's in
Nice.
Utrecht in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
There I will be also with two other speakers about Lego Serious Play and about Lego
Nice.
Company Incorporated. We will be there. So that's a conference where we will be.
Great.
So
Oh, I love
yeah,
it. I love you spreading the word. It's great getting to conferences and sort of just, like you said before, about just experience it. Like if someone's listening to
yeah,
this, just experience it. I mean, once you, like you did as a co-facilitator, once you experience the magic of it, like you get it. Like we can write
Yeah,
books and we can talk about it on podcasts, but if you just actually get along to it, everything falls into place. So it's great that
yeah,
you're doing it
it
at a
can.
conference. It's interesting as well. I didn't mention this in the, as we were going through the podcast, but Scrum and Agile, like I've often looked to them and learned about their history. If I think about, a method and scaling it,
Hmm.
and, we talked about communities and certifications and trainings, it's sort of interesting seeing other industries and how they've handled all of that. So it's been interesting, the Scrum world, Scrum Alliance and Scrum.org and,
Yeah,
all these things. So I think we can learn a lot from other spheres, other worlds,
yeah,
both what to do and
definitely.
what
Yeah,
not to do about
yeah,
scaling a method like Lego Serious Play. So cool. And I would say
yeah, I
definitely
agree.
follow Sarah along on LinkedIn. I'm a big fan on LinkedIn of just following people along, and there's always great stuff on there. And it doesn't have there's lots of different social media, we know that, but I think LinkedIn for me is the main one where we can just actually talk businessy stuff, and
Yeah,
that's where I do most of my work. So thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate,
thank
first of all,
you.
meeting you and diving deeper into it
Yeah,
and some of your insights. And thank you so much for being brave and doing those models and showing those. And yeah,
completely fine.
I look forward. Maybe we can get you back on sometime next year when the book's out in English and I can actually read it
Yeah,
and really dive into it. And we could
yeah,
talk, maybe we could
cool.
talk in depth about some of the other ones. We talked about, some of the liberating structures and some of those, but it'd be great to talk about even some of the other techniques in there once it's
Yeah. I
available.
can talk about them for hours, so let me
I know
know, and
I'm
I will
probably
let
sure
you know when the when the book is there, and then
it's
we can really dive into it.
It's funny. I've been thinking now when I'm doing podcasts, I'm like, oh, maybe I should like do an audio book, like just read my book. Like, and you're
The
right. You could just
funny
talk
thing,
about,
somebody actually asked me that if my book also was available in audio. And she
yeah,
said there were like companies where you can just speak it in yourself. So it
mm,
also is your own voice. And I found
yeah,
it really funny because this is really, my book is really about work forms and really doing it. And I was a little bit surprised actually that somebody told me like, why isn't it an audiobook yet? Because then I can listen to
yeah,
it in the car and
yeah. It's
stuff like
true.
that. I was like, haven't thought about it.
Well, yeah, no, no, but I think I'm going to do it. Like, it's going to be like, sit down, everyone, and listen to, Grandpa Michael, telling a
Well,
story,
that kind of,
reading his own book.
yeah.
Like, it sounds very narcissistic, reading your own book,
A little
but
bit.
hey, look, if it makes it more accessible to people, I think we should do it. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to the English version, whether it's you reading it or me reading it.
It
But
will
thanks, Sarah,
probably be a
and
book first.
yeah, 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 definitely. I'll do that. So yeah, we'll get you on again when that pops up. And in the
Cool.
meantime, just have fun running more sessions and look forward to more stories from
Yeah.
the
Same
world of
here from
Lego
you.
Series Play. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Cool. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone. Keep an eye out for more episodes. So this one with Sarah, I'm going to be getting out soon, but we've got a whole bunch of other ones that I've got. And I'm even doing some ones where it's just me just jabbering away. You talk about it being weird, Sarah, me doing just monologues to a screen.
Yeah, about narcissistic. Wise
Yeah, yeah,
one.
I know. It's like it's funny. My wife is just like she hears me doing it and then she looks at our two daughters. It's interesting you said about your family. So I've got a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old, so similar sort of ages that you were mentioning. And it's like they were doing the monologues, like they were doing their stories. Like one of them had Lego, one of them had a storybook, and it's like she was just sitting there looking at all three of us doing monologues. It was yeah. Anyway, there's
Well, the
obviously
apple
we've got
doesn't
lots.
fall far from the tree, right? In that sense.
Exactly, exactly. And obviously, we just all got stuff we want to get out, even if it's
Yeah.
just talking to a microphone and a screen. Anyway, I will finish. Thanks, everyone. And yeah, keep an eye out for more episodes of the LSP Method podcast. Until then, see ya.